Available for CX and UX consulting, projects, and training. Contact us for a free consultation.
Hey everybody, hope you can hear me. Hope I'm getting everything right today after yesterday. Yow! Well, hi everybody. It's time for Office Hours Ask Me Anything, which I do every Tuesday at this time. It is August 4th, 2020. I usually stick around for an hour. I take absolutely any questions that you have. And just a reminder that you can ask your questions live in the YouTube chat room or the LinkedIn chat, or if you want to send them anonymously, because sometimes people want to talk about tough work situations, you can certainly send them to deltacx.link/AMA, which is a one-question survey that goes to my email with no identifying information about you. I've got my chats open and I hang out here for an hour. So I am here if anybody has any questions about CX or UX, or sometimes I get questions about truly random things. Hello, Nilufar. You are we are connected. Good to see you. If you have questions, let me know. Looks like we have a few people live on LinkedIn and nobody yet in the YouTube. And I don't have any questions from last week. We answered all the questions yesterday just as time was ending. So I don't have anything to start with. I could just start by telling some stories, but I usually wait until people ask questions and then I will answer them. So if you have a question you would like answered and you don't mind it being answered publicly, I always hope you'll ask it here because the question you have is probably the question many other people have. So, excuse me. Okay, we've got our first question, and let me copy and paste it into the document I keep each week so that we can load this into YouTube. And the question is, how do you create an agile sprint for UX? It's a really interesting question. First of all, I am going to recommend one of my older podcasts about where UX and agile don't always get along, and why UX and agile sometimes don't fit together very well. So if you go to the Delta CX YouTube channel and you go to the live streamed podcasts playlists, go back in time until you find episode 32, and you'll learn a little bit more about some of my perspectives on agile in general. So you might need to give me some follow-up information, but when it comes to UX planning its own agile sprints, ultimately we need to be able to estimate our own time and to be able to determine what we're going to do with that time. So you definitely don't want a product manager or product owner trying to tell you what you're going to do during the sprint. To me, if engineers are estimating their time, you're estimating yours. Now, typically what makes a sprint different than any other amount of time is that typically because of showcases and retros, somebody expects you to have some sort of work to demonstrate or show your progress at the end of the sprint. And that doesn't always line up with things that UX is doing. And I just remind people that if you are part of that showcase or if you are showing your work on those milestones and on that cadence, that you just have to have something to show that matches what your plan was. If your plan was, I need to do 2 weeks of research, and your sprint is every 2 weeks, so it's one sprint of research, then at the end of your sprint, you are showing your research work thus far. Now, if it's just you've just done interviews and maybe you haven't written a report yet, you can still grab a couple of clips of interviews and say, here's a couple, here's 2 minutes of cool things people said while we were interviewing them. We don't have the report ready, but we didn't think we'd have it ready. This sprint was going to be doing, planning this research and doing the research. So remember that I try to remind UX workers you don't have to feel pressured by the agile model to go faster than you normally would. If you need to do research for 3 weeks and you're in a two-week sprint universe, then 1.5 of your sprints is going to be spent on research. So I'm not totally sure about what your question is aiming at. If I've answered it, that's great. If I kind of missed what you were going for, please do ask a follow-up question so that I can make sure that I can drive my answer a little closer to what you're looking for. The downside is that you're on LinkedIn, and I find that LinkedIn tends to hear what I say 2 to 3 minutes after I say it. So we might see your follow-up question a little bit later when you finally hear me say this. But hopefully you're around and you can give us a follow-up question or anything that would help me know a little bit more about what you were shooting for. But thank you, Pushpendra. This is Office Hours Ask Me Anything, and you're all welcome to ask me anything live in the LinkedIn or YouTube chat or through the anonymous method. And make sure nothing's coming into my email. Okay. So the anonymous link will come into my email, and then we just mark all of the questions that we get so that I can put them in the YouTube description. These are all archived on YouTube in the Office Hours playlist. So if you've missed one or you'd like to listen to them at 1.5x or 2x and blast through them, they're always archived for you to listen to. And this link is good all week. So if you think of a question at 2 in the morning on Thursday, you can use this link and I'll get the question and I will answer it next Tuesday, and then you can listen back. Okay, Nilufar has a question, so I'm going to copy and paste it for the eventual YouTube description. And let's see what the question is. I have a master's degree in software engineering. I want to apply for a PhD in HCI, and after that, I hope to work as a UX designer. Can you please introduce me resources to prepare myself to apply? Ooh, I am unfortunately not the best person to answer that question because I have not done a PhD in UX. So I don't have a great answer for that. I would probably direct you to some of the people who do have PhDs in this area, but both who got them recently and not recently. One of my favorite people to drive people towards is Darren Hood. He is working on his PhD right now. And so he might be a good person to connect with. He's easy to find on LinkedIn. Darren is Darren. Hood is Hood. He's got 2 master's degrees and he's working on his PhD. So when it comes to advanced education in UX, he's someone that I think is a good resource, and hopefully he's willing to take some questions. Hopefully his time. I find the man has no time. He would certainly be willing, but might not have time. So Nilufar, I'm sorry I don't know the answer to that one. I myself have not pursued a PhD, but I would say check in with some of the people who have or are working on them now, like Darren, and hopefully they can give you some good advice and direction. I see Plexus has joined the YouTube chat. Thank you, Plexus. And I see that you said that someone I just blocked on LinkedIn deleted the post that caused me to block that person, and that you've taken screenshots of that. That's wonderful. I did not take screenshots of it, but I do think it's a shame that that person claims to be working for the big mentoring website that everyone is trying to use to find mentors. That seems like someone who probably should not be mentoring if their key message is going to be that UX is not complicated and anybody can do it and just do design thinking. That doesn't seem like the right person for a UX mentor. Maybe a good design thinking mentor, but then again, I would have to ask what that even is. Nilufar, you're welcome. Again, I'm sorry I didn't know the answer, but I always want to be honest when people have questions and I don't know the answer. So this is Office Hours Ask Me Anything, and I'm usually here for an hour. We're only 10 minutes in, so 50 more minutes of this. Pew, pew, pew. And I'm trying to think if I've got any fun stories or anything interesting going on this week that I can share with you while we wait for people to have some questions. So if I'm yapping, just ask a question. I'm just yapping to fill time because I stay here for an hour to make sure I answer people's questions. What's going on? I'm just checking some of my windows to make sure I haven't necessarily Missed anybody's anything, but nope, looks like we're good. And my USB crashed horribly yesterday. I'm so sorry to the people who were trying to watch the podcast, and I know some people ended up leaving when all my stuff started crashing, and I my TV system was still working, so my guest was talking, but my video, my all my USBs died. So my camera, my headset, I couldn't speak and I couldn't be seen, and I was like, help, I'm frozen. So I ended up calling in as guest number 2. And so that eventually worked okay. But wow, I've learned a few lessons about USB connectivity. So again, thanks to those who watched yesterday. It was a great episode on should we be using empathy in design or not? Some people are all about empathy. Some people say it's kind of fake. And Don Norman says he doesn't believe in it. So there's definitely multiple sides, and we wanted to take a look at those sides with super guest David Snodgrass. So if you missed yesterday's podcast, it is archived in the live podcasts playlist, people. It is there. It will be episode 62. And of course, last week, episode 61 was Is UX Elitist with the always amazing Darren Hood and always amazing Dr. Nick Fine. So go back and watch 61 if you haven't seen that. We ran late because, you know, the three of us get talking and we just cannot stop. So again, ask me anything. I'm just yapping to fill time until someone asks me a question. This is what I do every week, including yap to fill time and tell stories. And let's see. Oh, did I really take that out? Oh, TV Studio. Me and TV Studio. Let's see. Can I adjust that while I'm talking? I'm just going to mess with my settings while I wait for you guys to ask me a question. I hope I don't crash the system. Remove. Remove. Okay. Save. So always save. Save your work, people. You cannot save your work enough. Okay. I'm just waiting for something to happen. It's office hours. Asking me anything. Who's got a question? You know you have questions. Come on. You can't just be here to hear me yap and take a look at where my skin is dry and dark today. That can't be why you're here. So please ask your questions. I'll do my best to answer them. If I don't know the answer, I will have to direct you to someone who knows the answer. Let's see. LinkedIn actually did tell everybody this time that that I was streaming, so that's lovely. There's 5 of you in LinkedIn right now. Hi. And we've got 4 in YouTube. So how's everybody doing? You know, we can just chat until somebody's got a question for me. If you want to be really silly, we can have one of you call in as guest number 1 and put you up on the screen. If anybody wants to call in and be an impromptu guest of the show, especially if you have a real question, let me know. We'll think about it. Maybe. Oh, excuse me. This is the time of day where I get really tired. So I know YouTube's frozen screen yesterday was me yawning. I was like, oh no. Okay, Nilufar's got another question, and let's get that into my list of questions. Okay, great. So to answer your question, I want to get some text up on the screen. So give me a moment to type it. Okay. Yes, Plexus, I'm afraid of the questions you ask. Okay, so Nilufar is in the LinkedIn and is asking, hey, another question. To start learning UX design, what should I do? And that's one that I get a lot, and because I get it so much, I've got a playlist ready to go over in the YouTube channel. This is my short URL to it, so deltacx.link is my URL shortener. So I would say you can either go to the YouTube channel, look at all the playlists, and find career playlist, or you can follow this link and it will dump you in YouTube on that playlist. And basically, my career playlist are all of the podcasts that we've done where I alone, or I with a guest, or I with multiple guests talked about things that are relevant to people who are looking to get into UX. So things like, I think one of the podcasts, of course, is episode 37. So you want to get into UX. Episode 56, my models of proficiency, which explain why a lot of the current educational choices do not teach you enough UX or in the right way. So something to watch out for as you gauge and judge programs. So I would say check out the career playlist. Lots of great videos in there. I think there's got to be like 10 hours of podcasts in there. Again, you can watch me at 1.5x or 2x if you are comfortable with English going by fast. But that would be certainly one way that you can go. And let's put this back up for questions. I see Joshua's question, but we've got a question in LinkedIn first. So I'm going to answer the LinkedIn question first and then get to Joshua. And Joshua, thank you so much for joining. I know we were just messaging and I'm happy to see you here. What do you think? So here's a question. Oh, LinkedIn didn't tell me who wrote it. Hadi say. I'm so bad with names. I hope that was halfway okay. Unless that's a kh. I don't know. Hadi say says, what do you think? Let me, and I've got an anonymous question coming in. All right, you guys are heating up. Took you 15 minutes, but you're here now. Okay, so what do you think about a language shapes the way the users think? Does it affect UX process? How can a UXer know all these differences? Great question. I think this is ultimately a question about what we sometimes call regionalization or localization. So for example, if we have a website in English and we want to make that website in Italian, do we just translate everything into Italian, or are there other things to take into consideration? Do those users possibly think differently? Do we need to use different stock photos for those people? Do we have to speak to them in a different voice or tone or mood? And I believe strongly that if we want to do regionalization correctly, that we absolutely do have to do fresh research with each set of users. So it could be a language, it could be a community, it could be representatives of one country, to make sure that we are interviewing them in their native language and that we are learning more about how they think. Now, if we end up learning that, holy cats, the Italians think just like the Americans do for this particular thing, then you can have one pretty similar, you could have two similar websites that just differentiate in language and some of the other assets and materials. But if your research does show that the Italians think different than the French, than the people near Mumbai, than the people near Bangalore, than the people near Toronto, then I would be saying your company went and did that research because you probably wondered if people were different. You learned that people were different. Now do the right thing and make sure you build something different for these people. Plexus in the YouTube channel is saying, I worked on a site for a giant US company whose main customer base was in China. When we did UX, we did a review with our Chinese coworkers, and they would often point out content that would otherwise, he's still typing, sorry. I jumped the gun. There's more coming. I just know it. But I hope this has started to answer your questions. And how can a UXer know all these differences? We can't. We can't until we do proper research, research that has been planned well with the right people that we recruited, not a friend of ours who also speaks German, real German people in Germany. So planning it, recruiting, executing it, interpreting it. These are all really important, and that's how we know. Because without doing that, we are guessing and assuming, and we don't want to guess and assume. That is very sad. I've got a new thing I can say. When you guess and assume, sad. You're going to make everybody cry. No more guessing and assuming, everybody. We have to make sure that we really know because we did the right research and we interpreted it correctly. Plex has finished his sentence. He says the Chinese coworkers would often point out content that would work for North America but had to be adjusted for the Chinese. And that makes sense. So I hope that helps. Thank you for a great question. And now we're going to get to Joshua's question. So let's paste that into the chat room. And then I see Mary and Nirupama and someone emailed. So I promise we'll get to everyone's questions all in order. Next will be the anonymous one that came in. Joshua asks, when you see UI grouped with UX in a position, what does that mean for the validity of the role? For example, junior UX UI designer. Good question. Something that is very confusing for people. You will probably find in my live stream podcasts, I don't know if I threw it in the career playlists or not, but you'll find in the live stream podcasts an episode where I said UX titles, what should they be? So I talked a little bit about the mess of how we don't even know what these things are, and that just makes our profession look bad. We really need to standardize these. So what does this mean now? Typically, what UX UI means and also what product designer means. Right now, they usually mean the same thing. Now, because this isn't standardized, there could be a company that means these in other ways. But I would say most of the time, UX UI, UI UX, and product designer usually mean an interaction designer, but usually these jobs don't check how well you do interaction design. If you can show a portfolio with a lot of visual design and graphic design and maybe branding, typography, things like that, and then if you show that you make wireframes, then usually that's a job that you might qualify for. The rest of us tend to cringe at that because, and I should have a button for this, okay? Because of my models of proficiency, which you saw in episode 56, making wireframes is a building block. Making them well is science and technique. So I find that a lot of jobs that say UX UI or product design typically are just saying like, does this person do excellent visual design work and can they make wireframes? Anybody can make wireframes, not everybody makes them well. If you're old enough to remember 1990s Saturday Night Live, you will remember Toonsis the cat can drive a car, just not very well. So, let's see, slide out. So I think that based on some of the things you've told me about your background, I'm not sure if you're ready for UX UI designer. It's certainly one of the easier jobs to get in that there's usually low standards for that job. Plexus, help me out here. They're usually, because a company who has that job usually doesn't know how to assess how well you do UX or not, you're typically assessed by your visual design work and if you've done wireframes. So it can be an easier job to get into, but very often you're not given a more senior UX person to be your mentor or coach. So many junior people love these jobs because they think, oh, wow, I'm going to get this senior person who's going to help me out and I'm going to level up. And sometimes you're the only person working on a project, on a team, or at the company, and you don't get that apprenticeship or leveling up opportunity. So just be careful if you are interviewing for those and you really do want mentorship or coaching or whatever, just make sure you're asking questions to see if that's in place. Otherwise, you could end up at a job where you're in over your head. Let's check the anonymous question and then we'll get to Mary. Okay. Thank you to the anonymous question asker. Let's take a look at the anonymous question, which comes from anonymous, because I don't know. And so it says, do you think there's going to be a void in the workforce in a few years due to companies seemingly only hiring senior UX designers right now? Yes and no. I think there's definitely a problem in that companies don't seem to want to hire juniors, but I don't agree that they only want to hire seniors. I actually believe that many, if not most jobs are actually for what we call mid-level. So when when you see junior or associate UX, that's typically supposed to be an entry-level job that requires little or no experience, but people are asking for sometimes a year experience. When you see senior, that's typically 5 or more years experience. Now, there's something between that. We call it mid-level, and usually it doesn't say associate or junior, and it doesn't say senior. It just says UX designer or product designer or UX UI designer. And you know that's what you're looking at because typically the job description will say 2-3 years of experience, sometimes 4, sometimes 1, but typically mid-level is a really strong junior who got promoted after 2 years, or maybe someone who got promoted after 3 and now they're mid-level. So I think we do have a lot of mid-level jobs right now, and those people will be our seniors in 2-3 years. But there's always the question of who's going to be our seniors in 5 years because we're missing juniors right now. So I think there is going to be a potential void. I think there's enough of us speaking up about it that I think there will be a shift next year, and so I don't think the void will end up being that bad or that long. But I do think we need to see more shifts in how education is done. Plexus says it's too difficult to type out my thoughts in 200-character chunks. I know YouTube only lets you type like tweet-sized comments. I apologize. Though I don't control it. So I definitely think that things are broken. I do want to see things improved. And I always say that any junior who shows promise, who shows some raw talent, who shows some personality traits that work really well for UX work and doesn't show personality traits that tend to be bad for UX work, I believe those people should get a chance. I'm usually not as supportive as people who don't fit those criteria because ultimately not everybody should work in UX. Not everybody would be a great McDonald's worker, not everybody would be a great truck driver, not everybody would be a great plumber, and not everybody would be a great UX practitioner. So I think that if we have some standards for looking for some natural talent, I'm not as worried about education, but if we have talent, some raw talent, some great personality traits, and someone who's coachable, see our episode on mentoring for coachable, I think that was 59, then yeah, these people should get junior jobs. But the problem is a lot of companies don't want to take seniors off work X hours a week to mentor the juniors. One service that my company offers is what we call fractional UX leadership, fractional CX leadership, which is where you can rent me X hours a week to oversee any juniors, mid-level, seniors that you have if you do not have a great UX hierarchy and you're lacking leadership. I can kind of be your on-call leader and be reviewing people's work and helping them with presentations and helping them with conflicts. And that would still save companies money if they're not able to budget to hire someone full-time. So fractional CX and UX leadership can be an answer, and it can allow companies to bring in juniors and give them the oversight and coaching that they really need. But I think it's still a service or opportunity that many companies still don't know about. So tell people deltacx.com and look under consulting for fractional leadership. I hope that answers that. Let's talk to Mary Catherine Kelly. Let's see, and let me paste your question into my list of questions. Do you have any advice for someone, me, says Mary, who is the only UX designer in an organization? Always, always, always tough. You always hope it'll be great because if I'm the only one, then I get to make the rules and I get to have the strategies and I get to do the things. But usually you're answering to a product manager, an engineering manager, or a marketing person who doesn't really understand what you do and often squashes a lot of what you're trying to do. I don't know if that's the case for you or if you do have some good power or autonomy to drive UX in good directions. But if you are the only UX designer in an organization that kind of doesn't get UX and isn't really sure where to utilize you and you're not really getting where you want to go. If you are junior, that's a really tough place because you don't really have enough years to be able to say, aha, I've done this before. Here's how we improve this. If you have at least a few years of experience with UX somewhere else, then you might be a little bit more familiar with situations like this, and you might be able to put together a plan, a strategy, and say, okay, as the only UX person who fits into projects, here's what we need to do. Here's the strategy. Here's where I'm working with product early on to make sure we're not coming up with garbage ideas. Here's how I'm going to connect with marketing to make sure that as marketing comes up with initiatives and things they want to measure, that I'm there to make things marketing wants better. That if they're going to A/B test something, I've worked on the B so that it's stronger and not just marketing's guess. Here's how I'm going to work with engineering so that as I am creating tested, vetted concepts, here's how they go to engineering, and here's how I work with engineering. So I find that a lot of juniors end up in their first job where they're the only UX person at the company and they're extremely lost, confused, upset, sometimes hurt, sometimes mental health issues because you were not prepared for this. Your boot camp didn't prepare you. A lot of stuff didn't prepare you, especially these boot camps where you just worked on a project with 5 other people and now you're the only person in the company and the company doesn't even understand what you do and you weren't prepared for that. That, of course, would be another opportunity for fractional UX leadership. So if your boss also doesn't get UX, if they do, talk to them. Hey, I'm the only UX person here. You get UX. You dig it. Let's come up with some strategy for how UX is utilized in this organization. Where you don't have that, that's where the fractional UX leadership can really work because someone like me can come in X hours a week, create that strategy, work with the other teams, handle the high level stuff that someone more junior might not be prepared to think about. So here we are, second question where I'm suggesting, consider me or other people. It's not just a plug for me, but sure, plug for me. Fractional CX and UX leadership. Again, you can go to deltacx.com and under the consulting navigation, you'll see fractional leadership. And Mary, contact me privately if you want to expand on some of that or send an anonymous question. So let's see. Any other anonymous questions? No. So we'll keep going with questions. Nirupama says, let's copy and paste this question. Nirupama says, what do you think about COE, Center of Excellence, for a UX design team globally for an organization? How do we build that? Depends how you define COE, because I've seen it defined a couple of different ways, and one is a little bit more scary than the other. I've seen Center of Excellence defined where UX is kind of an in-house agency, where when people need UX work, you lend them people from the team, and they join that team partially or temporarily or more long-term, and you're kind of an in-house agency, and you are working on those projects, and you move around from project to project. I'm for that. I like that. I think that's a good thing to do. It can make the UX team very quickly feel like they don't have enough people on it. So make sure you're speaking to managers about how much work you have and how overwhelming it might be so they can hire more people. I've also seen Center of Excellence defined more as this is UX's world where UX is going to teach other people how to do their jobs. So again, these two definitions are kind of opposite of each other. One is only UX does UX's work, and we're just going to kind of lend ourselves out to different teams as they need us, sometimes short-term, sometimes long-term. That means UX is doing UX's job. The other definition is UX is really more teachers, leaders, and crappy workshop facilitators. God, I hate workshops. And that your work is not doing UX work as much as it's teaching other people to do UX work. And if you've watched any of my other podcasts, you will start to get the feeling that it is very, very difficult to learn UX in a short amount of time. If you're not sure about this, please watch episode 56 in the live podcasts about the model of proficiency. You can teach people building blocks pretty quickly, but you cannot teach them science and technique quickly. It took all of us years to be good at what we do, which means you cannot drop by an engineer or product manager or a team of business analysts and just quickly teach them to wireframe. They will make wireframes at the building block level, but they might end up shitty interaction designers because they don't understand laws of UX, Gestalt principles, best practices, mobile app paradigms, material design, you name it. So, if it is the model where you are teaching everybody, I'm completely against that, and I don't want to see you do that. I would want you to show everybody episode 56 and stop pretending that UX is some easy, uncomplicated things that people can learn quickly. UX is highly scientific, highly technique-based, highly critical thinking. Basically, all the skills you need to be a good detective are the skills you need to work in UX, and many of our coworkers don't have those personal traits. Um, let's see. Oh, Oz is here. Good to see you, Oz. And he's commenting on something I was saying before. He says, good response in reference to the context of the real world, going from a team in a boot camp to being the only one and no one gets you. Like a data analyst, that kind of stuff is often harder than the actual job. Oz is right. Obviously, when you get into a job and you are in over your head, there's a lot more going on there than, am I doing my work? You end up with emotional or mental health issues or just concerns, fears, anxieties, and these are all real. In fact, we've got 2 podcasts coming up on August 12 and 13. August 12 is going to be Dr. Seth Finkel coming back again to talk about recognizing gaslighting and recognizing when you're being set up to fail. August 13th is going to be a new contact. Dr. Ruth Diaz is going to talk about resilience and how to be more resilient. So I'm excited about that. Let's go back to questions. Thank you, Nirupama, for a great question. And again, Center of Excellence is often misunderstood. I love when it's an agency model. I love when it's, I like to teach people enough about UX to be what I call conversational. I want them to understand UX so that when I say, I need to do some information architecture work, they go, yeah, we've heard of that. We know what that is. Okay, but I don't need them to do UX work. I don't need to teach them how to do UX work. And I've got so many examples of where I use UX work examples to teach people how hard it is. And then they go, oh, crap. Oh, I can't make a customer journey map. I'm terrible at this. People are terrible at what we do. And in fact, some people in our industry are terrible at what they do. So, blah. Are there fresh questions? No fresh. Yes, Maggie is here. Yay, Maggie. Maggie, I made a whole bunch of new special effects partially for you. I'm glad you're here. Maggie, how's the new job going? Are you still onboarding or are you doing real stuff yet? Everybody, we are very proud of Maggie. She got a new job. She gets the confetti. Yay, she got a job. Maggie asks, hi, Debbie. What are some good UX and CX conferences? Oh, Maggie. I have to say, first of all, I'm not aware of all the UX conferences. Every year I stumble on new UX conferences that I hadn't heard of before, and I go, why didn't I know about this? So in some cases, there are good ones out there, and I don't know about them. But when I think about some of the ones that I've been to or seen, I would say I thought it was a really nice program this year from UX Copenhagen. Which was in March. I don't know next year if she'll do online or in person or neither or whatever, but UX Copenhagen was really nice. It was in English, so that's accessible to people. I spoke at Big Design last year. I'm not involved with them this year, and I didn't even look at their lineup, so I have to admit I'm not too sure what they're doing. But when I spoke at Big Design last year, which is a conference out of Dallas, that looked like a really nice event as well. What else? I've spoke at the IA conference, and I have a little bit of mixed feelings about the IA conference. I enjoyed speaking at it. I love mentoring for it. They know that. But they also know that I had a little bit of a mixed experience with it. So, but then again, who cares what my experience was? If you look at the IA conference and you love the lineup, then it's a great choice for you. So I would say look at the IA conference just in case it's better as an attendee than maybe some of the strange experiences I had as a speaker. I had good experiences and bad. I don't want to make it sound like I'm totally pooping on them. I just had a bit of a mixed experience, but I would certainly speak there again if given the chance. We held our own conference in January. All of those sessions are in a playlist in the Delta CX channels. You can see Concentric Conference 2020. I thought that was a very strong lineup. I picked it myself. These were, I tried to pick things that I'd never heard at any other UX conference, and we got a really great lineup. There were few or no weak sessions, and these were mostly people who were strangers to me, so it was really exciting. So I would say take a look at that. I'm pretty proud of that. Oz says, let's talk more about that juicy stuff, the non-UX that makes the job hard. Like what, Oz? What makes our job hard? Maggie says IA is a mixed bag for me as well. I love IA and I do IA. The conference itself, I know they had a lot of turmoil of who was on their board, and then someone bought them or they reorganized. Like there was just turmoil, and they exposed a lot of that turmoil to some of the speakers and the members. And I was just like, ooh, get me out of your stuff. Get me out of your drama. So there. Oh, Peaches is here in YouTube and is asking a question I answered about 20 minutes ago. Peaches, you're late. Um, I'm gonna have to write that. Peaches, you're late. You're late. I answered this one. Peaches, great to see you. Great to meet you. Thank you for joining on YouTube. Please subscribe. Really quickly, UX designer and product designer can be different things. It really depends on the company. You have to read the job description. Titles are all sorts of effed up. See my live podcast on UX titles. What should they be? We need to standardize this. Nowadays, you just have to thoroughly read a job description, because you cannot tell from UX designer, product designer, UX UI, UX strategist, UX analyst. You never know what any of these are. Sometimes I see like senior UX designer and I go, great, I can be that. And then I read it and it's all this visual design stuff and I go, what? Or it says like senior UX designer, and they make it sound like the company does no research and we just want you to guess at stuff. And I go, oh, no one should do that. No, not at all. So, Peaches, everybody, read job descriptions, because you might be surprised. I can't even go by title anymore. To me, title is a search keyword adventure. Then I have to read the description, because I have no freaking idea what this job expects from me until I read it, because too often, so many of them, even like UX strategist will be like, please show a visual design portfolio. And I'll be like, I get hate mail about my background. Like, that's how bad a visual designer I am. So it's okay, Peaches. I'm happy to recap. We didn't have too many other questions at this time. So, yeah, our titles are all messed up. You don't know what the company expects unless you are reading the description. And hey, join us tomorrow. I think is it tomorrow, everybody? Join us is it tomorrow? No, it is Thursday. Mark your calendars. Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Italy time, so like 45 minutes ago. Thursday, we're going to be doing a live stream where we live brainstorm how we wish we could train HR, recruiters, and hiring managers on what UX is and what it does. We're all going to brainstorm, because I'm writing that training and I want to get ideas from everybody so that we can make sure we cover what you wish everybody understood about UX and our job. So that's this Thursday, the 6th. So come and watch in the live stream or get ready to join in. It'll be on Mural, but you don't need a Mural account. You can, join anonymously. Maggie says, woohoo, confetti. She's still onboarding until September while still doing some real work. Don't have a heavy load. Well, that's great. I'm still so proud of the job you got. It sounds good. And I hope it will work out for you. And I've been loading up some new effects, which I hope you will enjoy as they become relevant. This is office hours. Ask me anything. And just want to remind everybody, where's my little thing that says please subscribe? Ah, it's over here. I need to add that to my settings. Won't you please subscribe on YouTube and ring that bell? It's the best way to show that you support what I'm doing and share the channel with friends. I don't make any money from this. Maybe someday YouTube will send me $10. But as of now, this is a labor of love, and I would appreciate getting the subscribers and especially more people on YouTube because there it's a little bit more of a conversation. LinkedIn is so delayed. I also have a Slack universe that you can join. It's totally free, and I'm there answering questions and asking questions. So deltacx.link/join Slack, and that's deltacx.link, which is my URL shortener. So we've got over 200 people in Slack right now, but it's still a little bit quiet there. But again, when you need me, I'm there. Plexus says to Oz, like non-UX people overriding UX recommendations in production, I came up with an approach for that. Well, Plexus, we want to hear that. And here's Larry, who's like only one of my favorite people on the planet. Thank you, Larry, for dropping by office hours today. And he says, so if a junior UXer is about 5 years of experience and a senior is about 7 years, what am I with 30 years of experience? A relic? Oh, for that I get to use one of my new animations. Yes, Larry. Once upon a time, when Ra was the sun god over all, you and I were starting to work in UX. Maggie P, I hope you like that one. Yeah, Larry, I know. What if I have, if I have what at this point over 10 years of formalized experience and X years before that of kind of stumbling through it experience, what are we? Hey, that's just the downside of some of these levels. So, Larry, as for you, I think I would call you lead. If you don't want to manage people, right now the highest we have is lead or principal. Above that, manager, director, VP, chief experience officer. Larry, you should be the chief experience officer. Oz says, I believe I was paid $15,000 on a project because they needed an outsider to fail. Oh, Oz, you should be joining us on August 12th about people being set up to fail. Shit. Oz says, the project was a mess. I think my client knew it was going to fail, so they hired a freelancer, me, meaning Oz, to toss under the bus. I got the money, but I sensed too late this was a suicide mission. I've been there too, and we didn't know this until the end of the project. I was working at an agency, and we were doing a 6 figures redesign of a famous company's website, and we kept flying to their offices and meeting with them, and I did every aspect of UX that I've always dreamed of doing. I did all the things, and finally we handed them our final designs and our final everything, and then they were going to have their programmers install the new website. And some weeks later we checked their website, and it was a completely different website. It was like they just had to prove they hired an agency, and then they went and built what they want. It was the most bizarre thing. We got paid, and I put my work in my portfolio, but it never went live. They released something we'd never seen. It was absolutely bizarre. They had to have paid that agency hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I just got some piece of that, small piece. Brett says, my approach, create a contravened UX RICO list and document all contravened RICOs. Can you be more specific? Monthly share the list with the product VP. This way we state our RICO and rationale and we don't have to fight. This sounds a little bit like when I tell people to document when you get overruled, and to make sure there is a record of like what you designed and why you designed it, and or what you learned from research and how you're trying to use it or apply it, and how someone else overruled you. And I always love if you can also estimate the failures that might come because of you being overruled. RICO is recommendations. Okay, thank you. Peaches is back with a question. No, I don't want to block user. Why is that there? Okay, Peach is not blocked. Let's drop in Peach's question. I know you're not a big fan of workshops, but as a new UX researcher on a team, I was thinking of running one to get out team assumptions about our core users, gather info, and build trust. Bad idea? Larry? Plexus? Bad idea? Yeah, so I'm against that, and here's why. Number one, I find that people who are, now I don't know if you're new to UX research or just new to this team, let me know that because that might also affect some of my answer. But so let's talk about first building trust. When you bring people together in a workshop, how are you building trust? Because if you're having everybody do your job with you, I find that sometimes that backfires. They go, why can't Peaches do her job herself? Why does Peaches keep calling us into these meetings? Doesn't Peaches know we've got work to do? Does Peaches respect our time? Peaches is new to the team, 4 weeks so far. Yeah. So to me, the number one way to build trust is I treat everyone possible as my highest priority the moment they have a question or need. So if the product manager has a question, I don't go, let me get back to you tomorrow. I drop what I can and I go running over there. Marketing says, we're thinking about researching something. Can we talk to you? Yes. Are you free in an hour? Don't put them off to tomorrow. To me, the number one way you build trust is to be the person they can go to who's going to help them out quickly. That is I found that's the number one way to build trust. That, and of course, not being a jerk and communicating clearly, the things that we want everyone to do anyway. But I find that UX loses trust when we act like you're not my priority. Oh, engineering has a question for me? Well, I'm working on something else. I'll talk to them tomorrow. You are now the obstacle of the agile team. You are not going to be trusted. So, number one, I believe the best way to build trust is to be that person who answers questions or proactively comes up with things quickly. Um, uh, so, number two, why would we run a workshop to get people's assumptions about our users and gather info? Are you looking to get everybody's assumptions out so you can tell them, ha, these are guesses and assumptions, and you're probably all wrong. Hi, I'm here. I'm your researcher. I'm going to prove you're all wrong, or I'm going to go find out the true stuff. I think that runs the risk of looking arrogant, even if you have good intentions to help show people that mirror of their biases, of their incorrect guesses and assumptions, of we think, we know this about customers. Well, you're wrong. So I'm worried about, sometimes I find that when people run workshops that gather assumptions, whether that's one of those lean UX workshops, which heavily love people to talk about their guesses and assumptions, and lean UX. So remember, lean UX wants people to talk about their guesses and assumptions, but then wants the project to run with those guesses and assumptions. We run the risk that if people start believing that their guesses and assumptions might be right, might be good, might be worth running with, if people start saying them and they sound good to each other and they start confirming each other, you run the risk that someone looks at you and says, why do you need to weeks to research this? That's what I thought about users. That's what Jim thinks about users. It's probably just true. Let's just go with it. We'll save so much time and money. What are you going to do? What are you going to say? Jim's wrong? Jim's a jerk? Jim was wrong last time? I'm new here. Jim's probably wrong. So I think the problem with let's have a workshop to get out guesses and assumptions is something that ends up looking a little bit bizarre, is something that sets you up to appear possibly accidentally arrogant, even if I would say, yeah, we need to talk about guesses and assumptions and then dispel those. The problem is if you don't have the research data that dispels those, then people will start supporting and agreeing with each other. And if you do have the research data that dispels those, then why are you running a workshop to have everybody declare their guesses and assumptions only for you to go, bah, ha, 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 I have the research data that says you're all wrong. Now you look really weird. So I'm not for this. And as for gather info, what kind of info are you looking to gather? Because you are the researcher. And if you're looking to gather internal information, then why not set up proper interviews with each of these teammates or stakeholders or whatever it is, and learn what you need to learn from those people individually, where there isn't groupthink, where there isn't, hey, I agree with Jim, so we, two of us must be right, two against one. Peaches says, amazing. Thanks for your perspective. I always hear that you should get everyone in the room ASAP as a trust building exercise and get them involved so they feel closer to the research. Yeah, and I'll tell you why that's bullshit. And that's in a couple of my presentations. So let me open up that slide. Kids, let's go to a slide. I've just hit the wrong button. Hold on. Let me go to the correct slide. What deck is it in? Probably this one. Let's search for team build, and here's my slide. Okay, so the slide's not worth looking at because it's just a stock photo of a bunch of people in a workshop room. Or actually, it looks like they're in a 12-step meeting, but that's another story. And here's my script for that slide. I'm going to perform it for you, and hopefully, Peaches, this will give you some help and perspective. So here's what I say over the slide. The Lean UX book constantly mentions team building as one of the reasons why UX is not allowed to do any tasks themselves or alone. The authors appear to believe that if you conduct a few tasks without the entire team, you've hurt team building. Work by committee, democratization, and team exercises and workshops are sold as a great way to do team building. But put on your critical thinking hats as I ask you these two questions. Many of you know my critical thinking hat. And also, go back into the archives in the playlist of live podcasts and please find collaboration versus design by committee versus democratization. That will help you also. There's a whole podcast on that. This slide might be in it, so this might be a rerun or a preview. Anyway, my hat's falling off because I'm wearing this headset. Critical thinking hats on. 1. If team building is best done by group exercises and workshops, where are all the group exercises and workshops being run by marketing, product management, project management, scrum masters, developers, and QA testers? They all have work that we could all sketch and brainstorm. Yet how many of these workshops or exercises are done at your company as a team? Probably 0. That means the excuse of team building is a lie, since if this is how we build teams, we would do it in all areas and all domains at our company. 2. I researched how to build teams online, and I found mountains of articles, including those published by the New York Times, Forbes, Harvard Business Review, and Entrepreneur.com. 0 of these articles said to hold exercises and workshops where everybody does one person's job. Not even close. Most of the team building advice included get to know each other, understand what each role does, value and respect those roles, lay groundwork for work styles and deadlines, improve communication, set measurable team goals, celebrate successes with awards and recognition, and talk about failures and where things could improve. If you understand what CX and UX roles do, and you value and respect CX and UX, you will stop holding team design exercises and workshops. This means no design sprints, no co-design working sessions, and no group design thinking craft exercises. How will you get ideas from other people? Ask them. Or hold a Delta CX ideation workshop where people share ideas without drawing screens. And slide. Larry says, better than a workshop, set up a wall in a common area like a break room where you can post your deliverables, your personas, your maps, and allow people to add sticky notes. Then you can set up brown bags, so that's usually like a lunch and learn session, to go over some of the suggestions and the questions that people have, I guess, from those sticky notes. So I guess you would invite people to make comments or questions on some of your deliverables and then hold a lunch session where you talk about the comments and questions. Larry says these will help instill a notion that UX is being done and they can be a part of it. Peaches says, I think the pressure feels even more intense right now because of remote working and trying to make yourself seem visible. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you are collaborating, and again, see my previous podcast on collaboration versus design by committee versus decentralization, you can definitely be visible and a collaborator without inviting everybody to do your work, without inviting everybody to guess at your work, without inviting everyone to interpret your work. If you are a UX researcher, keep your power, keep your autonomy, don't give it out. The only type of workshop I tend to run is what I call my ideation workshop, where after hours of making people suffer through all the UX research that we have and how much we know about customers and their tasks and their needs, then I ask people to come up with ideas, but I ask them to come up with ideas in the form of a user story. Larry and users like Larry need a giant cup because they need to stay hydrated. Or Larry needs some sort of large drinking receptacle because he needs to stay hydrated. That's not a sketch of a screen. That's not stabbing at research. That may or may not be an assumption about a customer, but it's something we could certainly test and examine. And because people haven't sketched it out on as a wireframe, they're less likely to fall in love with their own design and be like, why aren't we doing Jim's idea? He's got a great sketch of that screen. So make sure that you're holding on to your power. And as for visible, you're in week 4. Cut yourself a break. There's going to be ways for you to be visible. If you haven't done any research yet, it's going to be a little bit hard. But once you've done research, call a lunch session. Call a 20-minute meeting to show people what you researched and how you did it and what you learned from it, so that people can be more familiar with what UX research even does. Because very often, product, marketing, engineering, they don't totally know. Sometimes they know, many times they don't. Excuse me, I am having a little weird moments here. So, Peaches, I hope that helps you. I don't know who you are in real life. You have a great YouTube name. If you have more questions, contact me privately. You can always find me on LinkedIn. You can always ask a question here, but you'd have to give me your email address because this is truly anonymous. Did anonymous questions come in? No, I didn't miss any anonymous questions. And okay, we read that slide. So yeah, be careful about the whole, I must need to, I hear a lot people say, yeah, I've got to get, I'm supposed to get everyone involved. And I go, okay, so when's the meeting where they get you involved in what they're doing? When are you going to that meeting where the product manager gets you involved in the product manager's work, not in your work? When are you going to that meeting when the DevOps engineer gets you involved in the DevOps engineer's work? There's something extremely strange about UX, and I think it's because of how misunderstood it is and how people think it's just bullshit building blocks that makes somehow everybody think they have to get involved in the UX. And I think that people can be involved, but we still have to maintain our autonomy and our power, and we can get feedback and we can get questions, but we have to stop holding these workshops that make everybody think, hey, if I just get in a workshop and put these sticky notes up and talk about my guesses about stuff, I'm doing UX work. Oh, why did we need Peaches again? What does Peaches do here? So be careful with that stuff. Larry says not a cup, but a frosty stein. Yeah, and this holds about 1 liter, so you could put a little beer in that, I'm sure. Mine is watermelon flavored water. Thanks to True Lemon, not sponsored. But I wish they would ship me some here in Italy because I can't get it. I'm working off old American supplies from last year. So yeah, Peaches, I hope that helps. If you have more questions, track me down personally. Let's talk about this. I always want to try to help people, but I do hear all the time, don't I have to hold more meetings, more group working sessions, more workshops to help people feel involved? And they go, I always say, how many workshops are they holding to help you feel involved? It's not a thing. We only do this to UX, and then we do it to ourselves. Like, you thought, I have to do this. I have to do a trust building exercise. I have to help people feel involved in my work. I wish people would stay the fuck out of my work. Like, I will tell you what I've done and what I learned from it and where I'm going with it. But like, in general, stay out of my work. I want to collaborate with you, but I don't want you in my work, and they don't want me in theirs. I'm not going to stand behind a developer and go, yeah, the way you wrote that line, not so sure. Don't like your coding. Why do we let them do that to us? Why do we invite them? Why do we hold workshops that basically say, do my job and poop on what I do? And Peaches says, such great points. At my last job, people didn't take our UX department seriously. So we were put in the position of constantly trying to make them see the value of our jobs. Super stressful and annoying. Yes. I mean, I've written an entire book about that. It is stressful, it is annoying, and it all comes back to this hub problem of many companies and many workers at these companies don't understand UX. And we end up thinking that we have to explain ourselves, explain ourselves, explain ourselves. And I've been there too, because you get hired and you go, how did they hire me but have no idea what I do? Or why did they hire me and keep trying to do my job? And these things are extremely stressful. And I wish that more departments came up with strategic ways to be able to demonstrate what they do in non-emotional, power retaining ways rather than we wish you understood us, so come for a half day and sketch screens. Well, at the end of that half day, that's the screen you're going with because Sally threw a fit and everyone liked Sally's idea. And now it's got to be that. And especially for research, Lean UX says you don't need specialized research. Everybody can get together and guess, hack their way at research. Guess, and then guess, interpret. Interpret your research through guesses. That's what Lean UX says. And that's killing us. No research is done like that. Nobody walks into the R&D, research and development department at a company and goes, yeah, I know you've been researching that for like 6 months to make sure that our future product strategy is going the right direction, but like here's what I think, because I have a design thinking certificate, so like I think this and like we should do that. We're in a bad spot, and we continue to put ourselves in a bad spot. You know, we're kind of like abused romantic partners because we're put in a bad spot by wacky people, and then we show up somewhere, and instead of immediately claiming our power, we immediately act like that kicked dog. And I had a great conversation with a woman last year, about a year and a half ago, when the first time I gave my talk, Stop Evangelizing UX and What to Do Instead. And that was at the IA conference, so that was mostly good. And a woman came up to me afterwards and she said, I'm a manager of a UX department. And she didn't say where, and that's okay. And she said, you know, I've been using the terms design thinking and some of these other terms because I think first I'm just going to have to win everybody's trust and kind of earn their trust. And then, well, you know, after that, then I'll switch from design thinking to, you know, talking about real UX. And I said, you're the manager of the team. Why did you show up to a job and assume that you had no trust? And then why did you act like you had no trust and that maybe you're going to have to win people's trust? And she said, oh my God, what have I done? We have to show up and we have to be trustworthy. We have to act trustworthy. And we have to act like we are experts who do this. And we're happy to collaborate with you. And there are certain areas where we include you. But no thanks. I don't need you to do my job with me or for me or instead of me. Larry says, if UX was simple enough to educate everybody with a workshop, then everybody would be doing it well. Since there are relatively few good designs out there, it's safe to assume it isn't. And for that, I've got to roll this out again. We can teach people the building blocks. We can say, you can make a persona. But did you make a persona well? You can make a customer journey map. You can guess your ass off and completely make it up and make a beautiful customer journey map. Did you do it correctly based on observational research and interviews so that we knew what the customer's journey is? This is the difference between my building blocks and my science and technique in my phases of proficiency model. And for that, I also have to say, ah! I know Oz probably wants this. I'll have to lend it to him. Is Maggie P still here? That was for her. I got all these new effects. Um, and of course, Oz says, preach. Yeah, we kind of have to. But, and again, I'm running late, but I'm happy to take questions where people have them and continue this conversation, knowing that hopefully we'll see some of you tomorrow from a silly podcast that should be fun. Yeah, we can't, and this goes back to the question earlier, like, should we have a center of excellence? If center of excellence means we're supposed to teach other people how to do UX's job because UX is stretched so thin, but we don't want to hire more of them, we want to retrofit people into our jobs, it just doesn't happen. How often do we walk up to somebody and go, I know you've been a developer for 10 years, but we think you'd make a good product manager, so stop coding and start being a product manager? Rarely. I'm sure it happens, but rarely. Excel says, I love that fire. Yeah, I just bought a bunch of effects to go with the emotions I have when you guys ask me questions. Go, ah. Someone said design thinking. Ah. Okay, I feel better now. So reminder everybody, I do office hours, Ask Me Everything every Tuesday, live streaming on LinkedIn and on YouTube, though I have to say YouTube is the better experience. And of course, you can also please subscribe, tell friends about the channel. We've got lots of podcasts. I'm usually going live on YouTube about 3 or 4 times a week. So I'm trying to fill the YouTube channel with a library of content that will be relevant to different issues that you might be having at your job or a future job. That library is there for you for free. I know other people want to sell you subscriptions right now. I do not. Plexus says maybe UX will go in the opposite direction we want it to. Maybe it's already moving in that direction. Maybe UX will become unnecessary and humanity will just get used to crappy experiences. I'm not sure anybody gets used to crappy experiences, but I know how you feel. I mean, I know sometimes we feel like, are we ever going to make this profession right? Is it ever going to be done well? I woke up to find Oz telling me, like, does he really have to turn on the internet ever again? Everything is so awful. And I see it. I feel ya. I want to fix everything all the time. I want to create new products to compete with crappy products, and this stuff can't get fixed fast enough. And I don't know why companies settle for such garbage and then congratulate themselves, or as I like to say, congratulate themselves for being so agile and lean and whatever. It's like, well, you released garbage that your customers put up with, and then your marketing team tells you they like it. Well, this is like all dysfunctional. It's just dysfunction on top of dysfunction, and I'm hoping it burns to the ground and we rebuild it maybe next year when we're not all concerned with so many other things. I mean, there's too many other things to be concerned about this year. Yes, we have to fix UX, but holy cats, it's a pandemic outside. The world's political system looks bizarre. And we're finally talking about racism. So maybe next year we'll fix UX if it doesn't happen this year. I think we need to fix a few other things first, like job one, don't get coronavirus. Thanks everybody for staying late and for coming to Office Hours Ask Me Anything. And tomorrow I'm doing a silly podcast. I found a report from 2004 on what will the internet be like in 2014, and I'm curious to see if they were right. So we're just going to have kind of a fun podcast as we look through that. And then join live Thursday to brainstorm what do you wish we could train HR, recruiters, and hiring managers on so that our jobs could be better and better understood. And maybe when that training is done, that helps push UX in a better direction as well. I can only just keep trying. That's all I can do. I can just keep trying. That's where I'll use this one. I can only just keep trying and dream that me and other people are going to fix UX and that all of you are going to be low ego action heroes and be part of it. Oz says, good conversation. I envision an internet where Debbie works 24/7 making perfect UX sites. Then there are 500 other people working 24/7 making shitty UX and dark patterns. Makes me sad. It is true. It does seem like there is an overwhelming amount of people not doing UX right or well, and that's something else that we battle. And again, hopefully some of this HR training will help as well, because part of that, Oz, is people, when they don't understand UX, they don't assess correctly for it, and very often they hire the wrong people. So I'm hoping the HR training kills some of the spokes in our hub and spoke model of evil. Larry says they don't get used to them, but they do tacitly accept them and assume that's about as good as it gets. That makes it easy for me to look good when I redefine the problem and craft better solutions. Larry is the king. So he's right. Yeah, someone wrote to me on LinkedIn and said, well, you must be making a lot of money, because when all these other people make bad UX, you get hired to fix it. And I go, that's not what happens most of the time. Most of the time, they see the bad UX and they go, oh, I guess we didn't really need UX. We hired that person. They did something bad. I guess we didn't need UX. They don't go find a better person. We effed up. We hired the wrong person. They go, well, we hired someone whose resume said UX and they designed this crap, so I guess UX isn't really that important. People don't understand how one bad worker can actually poison an entire company and make the whole company think UX is worthless, just worthless. So that's going to have to be it for today. I have run out of time. I've gone over time. Thanks to everybody for your patience and for hanging out. Remember, you can always listen to the archives at 1.5x or faster, and everything's always available there. This will be available pretty much immediately in the Office Hours playlist. And again, Oz says, Larry is a fellow veteran. Should I change my name to Oz Navy? I think Larry's Air Force. Anyway, you guys fight that out in a cuddly way. And guys, thanks again for joining another really fun Office Hours with a lot of great questions. Peach, is good to meet you. I hope you will be in touch. Thank you for your time. Thank you for a lot of great questions and a great conversation, and a topic we talk about all the time, because you're not the only one. So thanks to everybody. I'm going to sing us out of here, and see some of you tomorrow. Thank you, Joshua. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for watching. Delta CX is available for consulting and projects related to CX and UX strategy, leadership, training, problem finding, problem solving, and innovation. Learn more at deltacx.com.